So for our next segment, we're so excited to have Emma Gray and Claire Fallon with us. They are both hosts of the HuffPost podcast, here to make friends, a Bachelor Recap Show.
Yes, and we can't wait to hear their take on the upcoming season of The Bachelor, which premieres next week. But let's watch a promo for the new season.
I'm scared. I'm done. Holy. Colton!
Oh my God!
What just happened?
Colton's dramatic journey to love begins January 7th.
Wow.
Wow. Well, welcome, ladies. Oh, my God. That was powerful.
Wow. Really a lot
You know, absolutely. We definitely want to get your take on the promo in a second. But first, we want to talk about your podcast.
Yay.
What was the inspiration behind starting it?
Oh, wow. Why does anyone start a podcast? We love to hear ourselves talk. We both love The Bachelor. We work together, and we used to talk about it in the newsroom.
And on Twitter.
And we just thought, you know, we have a great opportunity. We're journalists. We're people who had access to, like, start covering the show in some way. And we thought it would be really fun to be able to be lighthearted about it, to make jokes, and also sort of to critique some of the stuff on the show that as feminists and, you know, women who care about representation, to talk about those issues. And it worked out really well.
Yeah, it's just we wanted to create a space that we would have liked as consumers of the show to be a smart, informed, critical consumer of pop culture.
Yeah.
Love it.
The show's been running for so long. It's this like cult favorite, remains that. What do you think makes The Bachelor different, or that like Bachelor je ne sais quoi that it keeps hanging on?
It's something that we think about a lot because it is sort of one of the original reality shows. It's been on almost as long as Survivor.
Wow.
And it has stayed really culturally relevant in a way that I think even a show like Real World that's so long running has not been in the mainstream conversation in the same way as The Bachelor. I think part of it is that The Bachelor allows us to kind of tap into those really base desires that we have for love, connection, romance, and at the same time allows us to laugh at it and kind of, approach it in a way that feels comforting and simple. Almost. Like, what a fantasy it would be if we could just go on a few one-on-one dates, say I'm falling in love, say I love you, and then suddenly you're engaged and nothing else matters after that. Like, not the way real dating and relationships work, but there's something satisfying to see that arc play out.
Absolutely. And over time, the show has really done a great job of staying culturally relevant, like you said. How do you guys feel social media has played a role in the actual Bachelor?
Oh, a big role. I think that, and I think they know that. You know, they used to be very nervous about having their contestants be on Twitter, you know, tweeting about the show. They didn't want things to get too loosey-goosey with information, but then they found that if fans could treat the show like a live event and gather to all like share their observations and to maybe get a little extra inside scoop from the contestants, that people stayed engaged with the show. They felt like they didn't want to stop watching, even if they didn't enjoy the lead, because they had a community. And it's something that we both participate in a lot, and it's so much fun. It just feels like you're talking with a lot of friends that you've never met.
Hundreds of your closest, snarkiest.
Talking about your dating life, right?
And it makes people want to watch the show live, which in, you know, the day and age of Netflix streaming culture.
Yeah.
How often are you actually like, I need to get home to watch this show when it airs?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of urgency, let's talk about this season, because that was a crazy clip.
I didn't know that I had seen that. Like, this is very dramatic. I don't know what we've gotten ourselves into for this season.
Right. So Colton is this year's Bachelor. Tell me a little bit about that. Are you guys excited? Are you expecting drama like that every episode?
Probably not every episode. I'm very good at editing promos.
They cannot sustain that level.
Yeah, and they're masters of the whole like, oh no, call an ambulance, and then it turns out that no one actually even needed an ambulance, but they got someone to say that they did. So you know, it's never quite what we expect. But I think that no matter who the lead is, the important thing is the contestants. And so there's going to be a crop of, it seems like a pretty young crop of ladies. Colton is young.
He's only
for a
26.
Bachelor.
Wow.
So there are, I think, 9 23-year-olds.
Yeah, 9.
Extremely.
A full third of them are 23 and under, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure these are kind of topics that you ladies address on your podcast. What other things do you talk about within the realm of The Bachelor on your podcast?
So we have a segment during our podcast each episode called Feminism Fails, where we just sort of look at what the pitfalls of the show when it comes to gender equality, racial equality are, and there tend to be a good handful. If you watch the show, you can guess that might come up. So, you know, as much as we love the show, we also think that it's really important when you're consuming anything to understand how that does or does not line up with your values and what messages that piece of pop culture is relaying to the millions of people that are watching it.
And I love that you guys are super self-aware in terms of, as professional women, educated women, feminists, that you're talking about this, but that you can also have a little bit of fun with it, right?
For sure.
What has been sort of the most like dramatic, crazy episode of your podcast that
Of our podcast. Oh my gosh. Our podcast we try to keep pretty light, but it does, you know, tend to track along with
the show.
And we had a lot of drama last season with one of the contestants. People discovered that he had liked some memes on Instagram that were offensive to a lot of groups, and there was some backlash, and so we ended up having other contestants on the show sort of talk about it on the podcast, and like without our even anticipating that, and then that ended up playing out through the season. You know, we were covering that, and we were also talking to people from the show and talking about the show, and that was probably the biggest. Although, you know, one season before that on Bachelor in Paradise, there was another big scandal.
Right.
So you never know there's going to be a scandal. We're not sure how to cover it because we started as a recap show.
Exactly. It's interesting as the world of the show has expanded outside of the show, and that's partly a result of social media, of these contestants being so visible. Suddenly the purview of what you have to cover as someone who talks about the show becomes much wider than just what you're seeing on television.
Absolutely. Well, you ladies are doing an awesome job of giving
Absolutely.
actually the women of The Bachelor a real voice, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And we would love to pick your brain on The Bachelor, you know, much longer than this. But we will just have to be tuning into the podcast.
Absolutely.
And to hear your predictions of who you think he's going to pick this season.
I bet she's going to be a blonde. That's my
Well, you guys heard it here first.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us, Emma and Claire.